Everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Skeleton Crew. I'm your host, Jen Callahan, and tonight I have a great guest with me. Her name is Deborah Thames. She works at the MD Anderson Cancer Center as a mammotechnologist. Deborah, thanks so much for taking the time to be with me tonight.
Thank you for having me. So glad to be here.
Oh, perfect. We were just speaking to another mammotech a few weeks ago, in education, which you also are in as well. So it'll be a really good conversation to have alongside with, the woman that I spoke with last week to kind of see where we're at in terms of your knowledge that you have of what you're teaching and the program that you're in. And then also to kind of for me to know, how does your center work in terms of exams and the functionality of everything, and then being proactive in terms of screening for patients and stuff. So I'm really looking forward to our conversation here. Let's get started. Can you give me a little bit of a background of yourself? You started being a technologist, in like 1996, I think?
Yes, I went to X-ray school in Augusta, Georgia. I lived there for a little while. My husband had been transferred there. So I went to a hospital-centered X-ray program. And then I graduated in 1995 from the X-ray program. And my first job, we had to do everything: CT, MRI, mammo, and I had never done mammography. I know in school that they showed a little bit of it, but there wasn't MQSA back then because MQSA was written in 1992 and implemented in 1994. So when we were practicing in X-ray school, MQSA wasn't even around. Then I had to work on the mobile in Augusta, Georgia, and I really liked it a lot. Had really been introduced to mammo, but I really liked it a lot. And that's where I had got started with my interest in mammography. Then my husband had been transferred to Houston, Texas, because he was in cell phone business. And so I tried to find a job here. I couldn't find an X-ray job at all at the time. The X-ray techs were too many here in Houston. So I couldn't really find a job. And the only job I found was in mammography. And I worked at this facility for a little bit. And then I transferred to MD Anderson Cancer Center. I just felt it was a better fit for my future career in mammography.
So when you first took that position in mammography, had you taken the boards for that, or at that point was it kind of like a cross-training situation where they didn't require you to be registered in it?
Right. Yeah. There wasn't any rules back then to take any boards or anything. It was volunteer. So I did take the mammography registry in 1996. I hadn't even really done mammography that much. I didn't know a lot about it. I barely passed with the 78 score, but I did get my M in 1996. And then when I got to Houston, Texas, I needed a whole bunch of CEUs at one time. So my facility sent me to mammography school because you could get 40 hours, very quick in a week. So I did eventually go to mammography school here in Houston, Texas. But I had learned a lot in mammography school that I didn't know. I had gained a lot of knowledge and better skills and tricks that it takes to do mammography.
Thinking about it, that sometimes the hands-on approach is what is needed for information to actually sink in. So maybe you actually already being in the field and then learning a little bit after, learning the hows and whys behind something, maybe it was an easier click for you than sometimes going into the didactic work first and then having to wait to do the clinical setting portion.
I agree with that. That's why I feel some of the laws in mammography need to be changed. They had changed some, and I felt they changed backwards in a way, because it's sending someone out to drive a car when they hadn't studied the handbook for driving. It's almost backwards, sending technologists to learn mammography and sending some do patients first and then go to mammography school, and that's okay. And that used to be that way, but it is now. So I feel that I really want to go to Congress and change many laws with mammography through what I have learned about the initial training with mammography.
How does your center work at MD Anderson? I mean, that's a really well-known name in the country for cancer research and treatment. I'm assuming that breast cancer is very prevalent right now, but do you guys have a large patient load? of patients that, possibly are coming to see you from other parts of the country or?
Oh, yes, we have a very large facility. We have a screening facility for cancer prevention program where both men and women can come for skin and men for prostate and breast and gynae and colon. It's a one-stop shop where they can get many things screened. So we do many screening mammography exams down in Cancer Prevention Center, about 100 a day that we do. And then we do have a separate clinic that's upstairs in a separate part of the hospital that we do diagnostic mammograms for patients who have breast problems, newly diagnosed, staging. Also, women who come back for their annual exam that have a history of breast cancer. We also have an undiagnosed clinic where patients can get an appointment the very next day when they have breast problems, because it's important to get these types of patients in a hurry that have breast issues. We have special time slots for those that can be added on very quickly for mammogram and a following ultrasound. We do about 80 patients upstairs in diagnostics up in the clinic. Also, we have 4 mammography mobile vans that go out and serve the community. I have been on the mobile for about 22 years.
Oh,
We
wow.
had to get our CDL license, our commercial driver's license, because the vans are over 28,000 pounds. So it requires us to have a special license to drive them. And 2 of us techs go out and go to clinics and serve the community. And many patients do not have insurance. So we get grants through people who write for grants and then through special communities, and some other companies do raise money for patients who are underserved. And then we also serve business women. We go to companies to where they don't have to take a whole day off of vacation to get breast checks and like clinical breast exams and a screening mammogram. So we also go to companies around Houston area and serve the business women who need screening mammogram. It just takes 15 minutes, and sign them in and come down, and then they can go right back to work. So we have a lot of services at our facility to reach out. And yes, we also have international cooperation with interpretation. We have legal interpretation for many different languages for our patients who come internationally, so they can have services at our facility. Since we are the #1 cancer center in the world, we do get many patients from out of state and out of the city and international.
All right. So let's transition then from you working in the clinical field to when did you find yourself wanting to move into education for mammo?
Well, at the time, I had a boss who taught at a continuing education company. And she said, we really need teachers. Why don't you teach? I said, no, I am not a teacher. She begged me and begged, wouldn't stop. So finally I said yes. And my first class I taught was the 8-hour fulfilled digital mammography requirement class. And I liked it. It was a little scary at first, and I didn't do well my first couple of times. Then I started practicing more and more and got more information into the classes and really loved it. So that's how I got started. And I also had helped with positioning, hands-on positioning courses she had done. So I had started doing that about 2002. And then I got into teaching about 2005 and 2006. And then she had quit and went on to another job. So I took over the 40-hour initial training for mammography.
Okay.
And I've done that since about 2009. And then also at the University of Texas at MD Anderson, I wanted to help start an initial mammography training there because we have many great resources with plenty of patients. We have 16 mammography units. And we had the resources to create wonderful, high quality mammography techs that can go out and save lives.
Mm-hmm.
And that took a long time to do it. And finally, 3 years ago, it came to pass where we had started And as part of the bachelor, they have a 3-year bachelor program in X-ray school. In the 3rd year, they make a choice of what they want to do, like CT or MRI or interventional. They have to choose their modality specialty that 3rd year. And so mammography and CT are combined. So it's a great program, and we carry them all the way through their clinical requirements and education requirements for the ART registry also. And that's a lot to do, but it's great. We have many students have gotten jobs. We just hired 2 new students. And so you create these students that know your facility and you know it's high quality. And so it's great to hire these students, and we're so blessed to be able to have them at our facility when you know their work ethics, their education, and they have learned the correct way. That's one problem in mammography. Many mammograms are done incorrectly. That's why facilities fail accreditation.
Oh, okay.
Because they're taught wrong. It's not always their fault. So many mammograms are done incorrectly in the United States. It just saddens me because we're here to save lives and find breast cancer at the earliest stage possible.
Mm-hmm.
So if the mammogram is performed incorrectly, we're not saving as many lives as we need to.
No, you're saying incorrectly. What exactly does that mean? Like the proper images aren't done, or part of the breast is missing, or what do you mean it's done incorrectly?
Correct. The part of the breast is missing. Regulations state we have to do at least 2 views in screening mammography, CC and MLO views. And so both of those views are done, but they are done incorrectly because MQSA laws state we have to show 100% of the breast tissue. Well, they give us 2 views to do it in. Many times it is not done correctly, where tissue is missed just from the lack of the technologist's skills or lack of knowledge that's given to these technologists. It just breaks my heart. It breaks my heart because they're not trying to do bad mammography, but it's just a lack of skills and education and knowledge about what needs to be on the image.
Now, say if a woman has a large breast or part of the tissue was missed and the tech did realize that, you say that you have these 2 views to do it. You had a patient who was coming to have an abdomen x-ray, but they kind of had a large belly. Sometimes you might have to do in what we call a quadrant. You break the belly up into 4 pieces. You do the right upper, left lower, right lower. You know what I mean? Is that the same theory that you would use in mammography?
Yes, they call it mosaic imaging or tiling, where we do multiple images on a patient who has a large breast. So we know that we get the whole entire breast on there in all the views. So the minimum views we do on a normal breasted average size patient is 4 views. Well, sometimes we do 16 and 20 images to get 100% of that breast tissue on the image. We get the pectoralis muscle. It's very important. The pattern of the muscle is correct. It needs to be wide so we can see some lymph nodes. Some breast cancers do happen in the muscle or attached to the pectoralis muscle. So we have to show this to the radiologist. So it's very important to get the pectoralis muscle in the views on the MLO. We try to get it on the CC view, but really only about 30 to 40% of the time we can get it on the CC view, which is top to bottom.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that can be difficult. I mean, depending on, say, if a woman might be small chested or maybe the breast tissue is dense. I mean, being able to squeeze back towards where the muscle is, I can imagine that can be difficult where things can possibly be missed, right?
Yeah, it could be difficult, but the law state you have to do it. No matter what body habitus the patient has, the law doesn't say, oh, you have a thin muscular patient, so you don't have to do as good as mammogram. No, the law doesn't say that. If a patient's had a stroke, the law doesn't say, oh, that's okay. You don't have to get as good mammogram now. You still have to get 100% of the tissue. So there's supplemental views. There's that we can do, and there's many additional views that we can do. And we just write it down why we did additional views or supplemental views to be able to accommodate this patient, because it's very important no matter what physical disabilities they might have or even mental disabilities. We have done patients that have mental disabilities, and it doesn't matter. They're just as important to be able to get a high quality mammogram. So we have to use skills and use multiple technologists. Sometimes there's 2 and 3 technologists in helping with this one patient. So we can accommodate that patient, do the highest quality imaging that we possibly can.
So when did you start teaching? At what point in your career?
In 2006, I had started teaching at one facility, and then the person had quit, so I took over the mammography school. But I had written up to about 40 different classes with all mammography topics.
Okay.
And then I had changed companies about 4 years ago, and I helped with their mammography initial program also. And I also do, for about 20 years, I've helped with accreditation failures with the ACR and other accreditation bodies like the state of Texas and the state of Arkansas. Also, when facilities fail inspection, I can go in and help them correct their deficiencies and teach them how not to do, something like that again, or teach them the rules, because many facilities don't know the rules in mammography. It's so strictly regulated. And so many times also we have to go in and do hands-on training with the accreditation process that's required. And I love to do that. I love to go into other facilities because I learn from them too. I see their ways of doing things that could be different from our facility. So I get many new ideas from visiting all across the United States with teaching and going in and helping with accreditation processes.
So the failure for accreditation, is that for like mammo screening facilities, or are you talking in terms of schools accreditation?
It's mammography facilities. They must be accredited, certified, and inspected to be able to perform mammography. Sometimes those processes, they fail, and then they need help learning how to do mammography correct. And maybe some other things like quality control. We go in and help with quality control to help with the quality other unit. And there's many different manufacturers, so we kind of have to teach ourselves the machines and make sure when we go into these facilities, not only are we just teaching them about the patient and positioning, but we're also teaching about the machine and how to get the best images out of their type of equipment that they have.
So once you go in and you do that, do you give them a certain amount of time before they're re-examined on what they're supposed to be up to par on?
They usually have 45 business days to redo everything. They have to resend in images, 2 different types of patients, one patient with dense breast tissue and one patient with fatty tissue on every unit that they have. So they usually have another additional 45 days to recorrect it and then send it all back into their accreditation body, whoever that is.
Since you started teaching in the early 2000s, do you feel like the curriculum in the education centers that you've worked at, do you feel like it's evolved quite a bit?
Yes, it has evolved, especially through different breast modalities. When I first started, I did a little bit of zero mammography where it was done on paper and blue ink. Oh. And then it transformed into film screen with cassettes and chemicals to help process that. That was brought into the United States in the later 70s into the 80s. And that process was wonderful until digital mammography came around in 2000. That had changed regulations with mammography learning 8 hours of digital mammography. And then came digital breast tomosynthesis in 2011. So the requirements changed to learn that modality, which is really good. no matter what modality that you use, you must have 8 hours of training in that breast modality to gain knowledge from that modality.
Would you say at this point the digital breast tomosynthesis is pretty much what's used throughout the United States?
Well, there's over 25,000 mammography units in the United States, and only 11,000 are digital breast tomosynthesis. So less than half right now, as of December 2023, are digital breast tomosynthesis. Hopefully, more facilities will get it. It has been proven through clinical trials and all the scientific data that has been done on digital breast tomosynthesis to get approved by the FDA to perform digital breast tomosynthesis images on patients, that it does find more breast cancer using 2D and 3D in combination. And it has reduced recall rate. It has less biopsies that are being needed. And you could see the lesion as a whole. And there's so many benefits to digital breast tomosynthesis. And I'm very surprised that the nation hasn't kept up with newer type of breast imaging as far as facilities, but I know it can be expensive. I know this, and I think that's one of the biggest problems why there aren't more digital breast tomosynthesis exams being done in the United States.
This episode is brought to you by xraytechnicianschools.com. If you're considering a career in X-ray, visit xraytechnicianschools.com to explore schools and to get honest information on career paths, salaries, and degree options.
Do you think that it'll come to a point where, say, for instance, like digital imaging in X-ray, I feel like by 2019 was put out that anyone using X-ray equipment were required to have digital imaging, or you were going to possibly lose your accreditation. Do you think that it might come to that with mammography, that maybe the ACR or whoever's in charge of the accreditation will say you're going to have until this year to upgrade your equipment?
Yeah, I think one day it will be like that. In fact, November 2023 was the first time that there's no film screen units left in the United States.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they don't come out and say you can't use them, they're obsolete. They just get phased out by patient demand. The patients have great knowledge through social media, the internet, and they can educate themselves. And they ask, do you have the latest technology? They ask. It is pushed out by patient demand, which is good. I agree with the patient. Why not have the best?
Yeah.
If it's available. And for a long time, insurances wouldn't pay. Just like when we went from film screen to digital, insurances at first would not pay. Then eventually regulations changed with insurances that the states mandated that, yes, the state insurances are going to pay. So eventually then the regulations came out where they had to pay. Well, the same thing with digital breast tomosynthesis. At first, insurances would not pay for it. Facilities purchase this very expensive, highly engineered pieces of equipment for mammography, and they couldn't get any paybacks on it. So they did offer the exams and had maybe the patient pay just a little bit extra up front. And then eventually, of course, now insurances and Medicare pay for it. So it does take a while for that to happen. But I think eventually they will say, yeah, if you're going to perform mammography, you need to use the latest breast modality. But it could hurt patients, especially in like rural areas that do a low volume of patients. They might not have that availability to go get a screening mammogram. So many times that's why they don't do it, because I wonder if it's one person or to be able to save their life screening them. So many times that's why they don't do it. But I think eventually they will mandate for you to get the best equipment out there.
So breast cancer is pretty prevalent, and I assume it's because the promotion of breast screening has become the norm at this point. Do you feel like MD Anderson, since they're like the leading in cancer research and treatment, Do you feel like they do a good promotion for women and or men to be aware of their breast health and to come in and get their screenings at the age that they're supposed to?
Yes, they're very good about getting the word out to remind women to get screening mammograms and annually. There's billboards around the city reminding women. There's websites teaching them about BSE or breast self-examination and about CBEs, which are your clinical breast examinations. And also education with classes. They do have some classes, especially through Cancer Prevention Center. There's also clinical trials that women can sign up for that we let the public know about. One time we were doing a spit test. Wrigley had donated tasteless gum and sugarless gum, and we had to spit in this cup. And they were thinking, well, maybe there's something in saliva that can indicate that you're at a higher risk for developing breast cancer over a lifetime. And there's other many clinical trials that one can sign up to help the future generation with breast cancer. Breast cancer awareness just puts a little click in a patient's mind that says, yes, oh, I need a screening mammogram. I haven't done it in a year or two. And it really is needed annually. We know the number one risk factor of developing breast cancer over a lifetime is gender. A woman has a 1 in 8 chance compared to a man who has 1 in 1,000 chance. So gender is the number one risk factor, and number 2 is age. And as we get older, our genes can't repair themselves as well. So age is a risk factor, and those are very important risk factors. It reminds them to get in annually. Say you get a mammogram done in October of 2023. Say you had a mammogram done. Well, if you don't come back annually, and if you wait 2 years, and say you get breast cancer in January, well, if you wait another year and a half, that could develop to a later stage invasive type of breast cancer instead of finding it early. So that's why annual mammograms are so very important, to find it at the earliest stage possible where it's treatable.
What is it about the age 40 that why does they recommend for a woman to get her first mammogram?
Because that's the decade of age where breast cancer risk jumps higher.
Okay.
With the second decade and third decade of life, the percentage is very, very low. And in the fourth decade of life, the percentage jumps high.
Do you think it has something to do with changing of hormones in the body at that point of life?
It can. That is a risk factor with the number of periods you've had over a lifetime, what age you started your period, what age you ended your period, because it does have to do with hormones. If a patient is taking hormone therapy, that can bring some risk. And so it's all about the education of that. But yeah, it's very important with 40 and over that you get an annual.
Being a mammotechnologist, how do you feel that you or someone should raise awareness for their patients in terms of breast health? Is it a reminder before they leave, like remember to schedule your appointment, maybe you schedule it right away, or reminding possibly a woman to do a breast self-exam?
Yes, we remind the patients that you need to schedule for the next year. It's very important that you come back every year. And we also teach them it's important that you go to the same facility. We say if you can't come to our facility, choose a facility that you could go to. That way the records are there. They have previous exams for comparisons, and they'll have the reports also. We do help to be an advocate to educate the patients about returning for their mammogram the next year. We do remind them, we do talk to them. And then our patients go to the clinics, and the clinics also remind them. So they get 2 or 3 reminders. And then some facilities do send a reminder card. That's a neat process. It can be costly through the postal system. Some will do it through like electronic health record as a reminder that, hey, it's been a year, it's time for your mammogram. They can have warnings through the electronic health records also. or what's called like My Chart, where they can look at their personal health records, even access their images, which is a nice plus for the patients too.
So going from that, how we were talking about the digital breast tomosynthesis, so that was a development in 2011 and still, working its way, trying to get into a good majority of facilities. Like you said, it's not even in half of them. Do you see more technology advancing? I mean, technology is always pretty much advancing, but do you have any knowledge of where or what might possibly be in the future for mammography imaging?
Yes, there is a new technology out called CEM, contrast enhanced mammography. Our facility does it. Many facilities do it in the United States, where we inject patients with iodine contrast, and we have to do their images within 6 minutes before the contrast rushes out of their body.
Okay.
And that is a great new technology. It has a high sensitivity and specificity rate for finding abnormalities, and also molecular breast imaging that has been around for a very long time, but it's improved with spatial resolution where you see more detail, and also reduction in dose from the radioisotopes. They first started out with gamma cameras, whole body gamma cameras. Then they went to BSGI, which is breast specific gamma imaging, which was a dedicated mammal machine. Also, then they went to PEM, positive emission mammography, with lower dose and better detail. And now there's MBI. MBI has been done. I'm not quite sure exactly how long. I think we've done it at our facility for about 5 years. One of the problems was the companies kept going bankrupt that made these machines for molecular breast imaging, but other companies kind of had taken over. And so we have different diagnostic tools to help mammography. And these other diagnostic tools, yes, breast ultrasound is wonderful and breast MRI is wonderful, but these other newer breast modalities are also helping find breast cancer at earlier stages possible.
So would that type of molecular imaging be used in conjunction, I guess, with a nuke med tech?
Mammographers do it, but the nuclear medicine technologist does help us with quality control of the machine.
Okay.
And we send our patients to get injections
Right.
through nuclear med, even though we could do it. Our technologists were trained. It was just a time issue.
And then in terms of the contrast enhanced imaging, so you inject the patient with the contrast, and then is the theory behind it that it's going to go to the area of if there is some type of mass or something?
Yes, ma'am, it does. It enhances on the subtraction of the computer. So it takes a high KVP image and a low KVP image, and then it subtracts it with the computer software, and it will show enhancement that possibly is cancer, and it has a high sensitivity and specificity rate for finding breast cancers. And they do compare it to MRIs. It is a supplement of MRIs, especially for patients who can't have MRIs due to maybe body habitus or claustrophobic or have metal implants in their body. So it's a great alternative to MRI. Plus, it is less expensive. It's faster to read for the radiologist, and there's more time slots.
If you could, real fast, for people who might be listening that aren't actually working in the field of radiology, just give maybe a 1-minute synopsis of high KVP versus low KVP imaging for.
A lower KVP range for digital mammography could be, they use 26, 27, 28. And then a high KVP for CEM would be 49 for that contrast. Also, it uses a different filter. It uses a copper filter. The filters used in mammography, usually molybdenum, rhodium, silver, and then it uses aluminum for tomo, but this uses copper. Now, some manufacturers even use titanium. It is a different filter, and so it does take a low energy image and a high energy, and image because you want to go 33 is the perfect attenuation number for mammography. So they go below 33 and they go above 33, and then they subtract it, and that's where you see enhancements. And we have seen many cancers that have not shown up in any other modality but CEM. It's very interesting. I do teach a class on that, and I've tried to teach myself most things about it. We do it. I have done it at my facility. I don't do it on a regular basis, but it's amazing to me. I get shocked sometimes with little tiny non-index cancers that have been missed on other breast modalities.
So is this just done through an IV then? Like say like you have an IV placed in your arm, you inject the contrast, and then within, I guess, like a few seconds, you have to start the imaging?
Yes, it is through an IV, and we have power injectors just like they do in CT. We inject it with saline and the contrast. We finish with saline, and then we have to wait 2 minutes for it to circulate throughout the whole body. You have to tell the patient you're going to feel like you're going to urinate on yourself. You're going to feel tingly. This is all normal. You have to tell them the symptoms that they're going to be feeling. And after 2 minutes that it's circulated, then you have 6 minutes to complete your imaging.
What would be considered high risk for, is it someone who has already been diagnosed with it and is in recovery? I guess also to someone who might have a family history of cancer. What other markers make you high risk?
Having dense breast tissue puts you at higher risk. Also, if you have mutation genes, there's many mutation genes out there that can raise your risk of breast and or ovarian cancer. The more common ones of BRCA1 and BRCA2 can raise your risk. Also, yes, having first degree relatives like mother, sister, or daughter is first degree relative. Multiple relatives having breast cancer or ovarian cancer. And also having a biopsy with high risk pathologies such as ALH, atypical lobular hyperplasia, or ADH, atypical ductal hyperplasia, or LCIS, lobular carcinoma in situ. There are high risk pathology that can raise your risk of developing breast cancer over a lifetime. There's many other ones that can raise your risk. So we put these patients in a high risk, maybe short-term follow-up or alternating MRI and ultrasound and mammo. We do put them in a different category and keep a good eye on them. And sometimes they are offered endocrine therapy or molecular therapy like tamoxifen or Arimidex to help reduce the risk. So they do see counselors. We also had genetic counselors. If someone's at a high risk, they get counseled. And sometimes they do get blood tests to be able to see if they do have mutation genes that can raise their risk of developing breast cancer over a lifetime. Then that counselor also will give them options, bilateral prophylactic mastectomies or short-term surveillance or molecular or endocrine therapy. So there's many options that are left up to the patient and their families on how they want to decide to make that decision.
Well, Deborah, thank you so much for sharing your wealth of knowledge with me and everyone else that's listening with us tonight. Everybody, this is Deborah Thames joining me. She's a professor at 2 different schools and she works in the clinical realm at MD Anderson. I mean, you are a busy woman and I am very thankful for you taking your time to meet with me tonight and share your information and your wealth of knowledge with me and the world. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was my pleasure.
All right, everybody, this is Deborah Thames. I am Jen Callahan, your host here at the Skeleton Crew. We will check you out next week. All right, we'll see you later, guys.
You've been watching The Skeleton Crew, brought to you by x-raytechnicianschools.com. On the next episode, join us to explore the present and the future of the rad tech career in the field of radiology.